And this is from Julie in California. Dear Lex, I just started listening to your podcast. My 8-year-old daughter loves it too. I've only had one experience with what I might call a ghost. I was about 7 years old. I lived in a little house in Vermont at the time and was watching TV in the living room. I did not realize that my mother had gone upstairs. I began to feel a prickling on the back of my neck, as if someone was staring at me. After a while, it started to feel very uncomfortable. I turned around believing that my mother was sitting on the couch. She wasn't there. But something had been staring at me, and I could feel an angry presence still watching me as I skirted off the couch and ran upstairs. Okay, and that's from Julie in California. Thanks so much, Julie. And the last one we have is from John in New York, Long Island, New York. Hi Lex, love the podcast, glad I found it. I look forward to hearing other people's stories. I have a couple of my own I would like to share. My name is John. I live in Long Island and grew up in a small town where everyone seemed to be related. I was a teenager when we put 2 extensions on the house. I'd always felt I had something or someone around me. For instance, I would go upstairs and, like any other teenager, from time to time I would forget something and would turn around quickly to go back down the stairway. At this point, I started to feel a little bump. When I would turn around, nothing there. This went on and got to be rather annoying, and ultimately a little scary. The bumps were becoming harder and harder. It got to the point that one evening I turned around and whack! I ended up on the floor. I hollered and said, "Leave me alone!" That was the last time it happened. Years later, I went to a psychic fair to see what it was all about. I was drawn to a guy who did Kirlian, I guess Kirlian, photography, which is supposed to show you your aura, among other things. What showed up in my photo surprised both me and the gentleman interpreting the picture. It was an array of faces surrounding what looked like a person wearing a hat. At the time, I was wearing a hat, and the guy said that there are many spirits around me. I still have that photo. To validate this, he also told me other things for which he was right on the money. Soon, I began to correlate this with my experiences from years earlier, and I was sad that I had chased that spirit away. I still feel them around me, but I don't see them, hear them, or bump into them. My other experience was in Waterbury, Connecticut, at the home of my wife at the time's aunt. We went to bed that night in an upstairs bedroom. Keep in mind, this was a very old house in a very old town. During the night, I kept hearing someone walking across the wood floor. I would sit up, and of course there was nothing there. This kept going on all night. Even my wife heard it after a while, so, needless to say, we didn't sleep very much. In the morning we got up and went downstairs. My mother-in-law asked, "How did you sleep?" "Okay," I replied. "But was there something you didn't tell me about that room?" She asked, "Why? What happened?" I told them, and their reply was, "That's all?" Apparently, things move from place to place. Apparitions appear in the mirror, and other things. I'm glad someone came up with this outlet for people to relay their own experiences. Lex, great job, and keep it up. Okay, and that's from John in Long Island, New York. Thanks so much, John. Alright, and like I said, that's it for the stories. But I'm going to read this here. This is an interesting story if I turn it the right way. It's called the Peninsula School. A bride dead under mysterious circumstances, a grand mansion built at a great cost, and then abandoned. The legend begins here and then twists and turns into a dark labyrinth of possibilities. The impressive structure built by San Mateo Country Assemblyman James Coleman in 1880 cost $100,000, a fantastic sum in those days. According to one nostalgic story, it was to be a gift for his lovely wife, the former Carmelita Natal, a woman described by contemporary newspapers as peerless in beauty and accomplishments. The mansion was nearing completion when a tragic event occurred that cast a somber shadow over the place for more than 100 years. Coleman returned from a business trip to the San Francisco hotel suite that he shared with Carmelita. Though it was 5 a.m., the dutiful young wife rose from bed and proceeded to unpack his bags. Somehow, as she was removing a gun from its valise, Carmelita accidentally shot herself. It is said that the distraught bridegroom never set foot in the Peninsula Palace that had only just been completed. The house changed hands several times over the years, no one lingering long. In 1906, a young woman is said to have ended her life there, hurling herself down headlong a steep stairway. When the founders of the Peninsula School purchased the mansion in 1925, they acquired a resident ghost as well. Almost from the beginning, Carmelita Coleman was a loved and feared member of the school community. The romantic tradition of her tenancy has grown with the years, sparked by some very vivid experiences. Yesterday's Victorian elegance has been replaced by today's space-age funk, but the legend of Carmelita is still very real. For more than 50 years, there have been stories of shimmering lights, unexplained footsteps, and pets that refuse to enter the building. Generations of children have told of glimpsing the wraith-like figure of a woman dressed in green. Some say the woman herself is green. Once, an entire class saw the apparition. Ken Cole, a former caretaker, remembers quite vividly being awakened at 3 a.m. one summer morning by the sound of footsteps. I had been sleeping on the couch in the staff room, he recalls. The footsteps seemed to come from the room just above me on the second floor. I lay there absolutely petrified. Finally, Cole forced himself to track the sounds. They grew louder and louder as he climbed the stairs. Then, just as he reached the landing, a door opened before him. He entered, and the door closed behind him. The room from which the footsteps had seemingly come was empty. The only window was closed. Opening it, Cole looked down. It was a 40-foot drop to the ground below, and there was no indication of anyone having taken that exit. The house was quiet now. Whoever or whatever had been there was gone. Marianne Collins, a parent of a former Peninsula School student and one-time custodian, felt Carmelita's presence many times, but never actually saw her. Joe Starr and Monique Kane, former teachers at the Peninsula, tell of an overnight at the school when some 20 children saw an apparition. Starr described the vision as a green woman who appeared to be transparent. As he attempted to approach the figure, it moved backward, but remained visible for a full 5 minutes. Starr asked the children to sketch what they had seen and found that all the drawings were similar. A green woman who seemed to shimmer. Starr encountered the apparition another night. This time the green lady confronted him in a black hallway when he was all alone.